Hey everyone, welcome back to the Stranded J podcast. We will have some guests. I'm in the works of getting more guests here in the next episode or two. We're just scheduling is a little difficult when you're doing a podcast from a basement. But there is still a lot of discussion going on, and I have some people that'll be showing up here very shortly. Just a reminder that since we have changed our podcast name to the Stranded J podcast, you can find us at all those links. So whether you are listening to us on Spotify or you see us on Facebook or watching us on YouTube, all of the links should all be correlated. So I hope you guys are able to find us, have some fun things to talk about with you, and I've missed you. So let's get right into it, shall we?
The Stranded J podcast.
All right. So last time we did this, we did a little bit of news. I don't have as many articles and things with the news going on this week, but I do have two topics or two things I wanted to talk about. So let's just jump right into them because I have a lot to say about, well, I think both of them, but mainly the second one. So the first one that I just came across is from the Hollywood Reporter. It literally was just published like an hour ago. It says, Chris Evans denies returning to MCU for Avengers Doomsday. Quote, I'm happily retired. According to this article, Chris Evans has yet again said that he will not be returning as Captain America, Steve Rogers, for Avengers Doomsday, which is reportedly going to have Dr. Doom in it, played by Robert Downey Jr., which is, I don't know how I feel about that yet. It's exciting, like, first glance, like, oh, I'm excited to have Robert Downey Jr. back, and he's such a good actor. I think he'll kill any part he plays. However, it seems like a little bit of a desperate attempt by Marvel to bring back kind of the golden era of the Marvel movies. And we're going to get into, with our main topic today, we're going to get into more Marvel, but I don't know. We'll see how that works out. But according to Chris Evans, he's not returning. As of right now, we still have our Captain America as Falcon. He's been Falcon now since the end of Endgame because Steve Rogers, spoiler alert, if you didn't watch a movie from like 2019 or 18, he went back in time to put the stones back that Thanos had taken, all of the Infinity Stones, and he was supposed to come right back, and then, at the end of the movie, he shows up and he's an old man. He, pretty much retired along with Robert Downey Jr., and, we weren't sure about everybody else, and that's where we've gotten a few more movies with Thor, with Chris Hemsworth. We got Thor: Love and Thunder. We'll talk about that one another time. But basically, people weren't sure where this was going to go. So that last scene, you think, is it going to be Bucky who's going to take it, played by Sebastian Stan, or is it going to be the Falcon, played by Anthony Mackie? Well, the Falcon walks up to him because Bucky already kind of knows because he's so close to Cap, and they talk, and Cap passes the shield off to Anthony Mackie, the Falcon. And so we got Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which also had Bucky in it. That was a Disney Plus show. I think it was the second one they did on Disney Plus. And that's where we got kind of the earning the shield moment for Sam Wilson. And so we have him now as Captain America, and he has his own movie coming out, Captain America Brave New World. So with Captain America Brave New World, we have Anthony Mackie still back as Captain America, but everybody is wondering if Chris Evans will return because, these are comic book movies and everybody dies and returns. And on top of that, if Robert Downey Jr. is coming back, is he going to come back in some capacity? And then we just saw him in, spoilers, Deadpool and Wolverine, where he returned as Johnny Storm, which is the first Marvel role he played, the Human Torch. They've been asking him if he's coming back or not, and he's apparently saying no. However, he's been saying that he said that before, and he appeared in Deadpool and Wolverine, and then you can go back and think of somebody like Andrew Garfield who played Spider-Man, and he denied it forever that he wasn't going to be coming back, and then he showed up in Spider-Man No Way Home. So we don't know for sure what they're going to end up doing, but what I will say is, from my personal opinion, I don't know. I think that, I loved Chris Evans as Captain America. I can't really see anybody else playing him as Steve Rogers. And I think it would be great to, have that character back, especially for such a big movie. But yet again, Marvel's in kind of a weird place now because it's kind of like, are we going to see, something new? Are they bringing in the X-Men and, they're doing Fantastic Four? it feels like a little bit of desperation to kind of get back what was like their best era when they bring back characters that, especially ones that they killed. And so I don't know, man, when Endgame ended, that's where I was like, I'm done. I think I've got my fill of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'll just go back to the comic books. We've had some good ones, with Spider-Man and Deadpool and a few more. The Loki series was great. This is normally in Hollywood when they would probably reboot their universe, and they don't really want to do that because of how successful it is and how it still has a ton of window of opportunity, but it just hasn't been hitting as well. And I think that there are good gems that have, kind of taken over some of the movies, like I said, with Deadpool and Wolverine and Spider-Man and things like that, but it's not the same. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. I'm curious to see, kind of where we end up. I'm excited nevertheless. I'm excited to see where it goes. Like I said, the main topic we're going to get into today is going to be very Marvel centric. But I did want to move on and change gears just slightly and talk about the 97th. Is it the 97th? I got to go back. Yes, the 97th Academy Awards. I did want to go over kind of the Best Picture nominees because that's kind of the big award of the night, right? You have Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. I have seen Dune Part 2 and Wicked. I haven't seen any of these other movies. Usually I'm one of those people that once the, whoever gets nominated, then I may kind of eye, what I'm looking, what I may want to watch. I remember the year that, we had a lot of stuff like Whiplash, and I think Birdman came out that year and stuff like that. I started to really dig in the year of Argo. I kind of wanted to look into those movies after they had been nominated or after they won. And I was glad I did. But, I'm not a huge fan of the Academy Awards just because I feel like I think the most important thing with movies is how they make you feel and how they make people feel. And I think, kind of condensing it down to these are the best movies of the year by these specific people is kind of not the right way to think of movies. And, you can disagree with me if you want on that, but I think it's not quite the way to go. For one person could think that, Birdman is their favorite movie of all time. And another person could, think that, I don't know, that Spider-Man 2 from 2004 is their favorite movie of all time. Or they could think that Monty Python and the Holy Grail is their favorite movie of all time. And those are all very different movies and they're very good in different ways. And, I don't know, to kind of like give people awards. It just feels kind of like a way to bolster people's career and the producer's career. And I just don't know how I feel about that. I follow it enough because sometimes it will turn you towards movies that you may have not have seen otherwise, just because it's not in the genre that you usually look for, things like that. I remember like when The Shape of Water won Best Picture, like that's one of those movies that, I love Guillermo del Toro, but like I never had any interest in seeing it just because I had other things to watch and I just never thought I'd get around to it. And, it kind of put it higher up on my list to see. So, that can happen, but overall, I think sometimes people put a little too much stock in the Oscars. But just going over these, I honestly don't know anything about these other movies that I have not seen. The only one that I know that I haven't seen that's, kind of going around right now is Amelia Perez. It has a lot of controversy with it because essentially it's a woman trying to track down a person who's transgender, kind of a really broad explanation of the plot. And it's like a musical, and I've heard some of the music from it. And then you got something like Wicked that it's competing against. And I know, there's some people who are praising it like crazy. And then there's a lot of people who are saying, this feels like a planted like push for the Oscars that you see sometimes. And so now you're getting a lot of these articles that you're seeing of people talking about, what's happened in the past. Like, what are these movies that have won Best Picture that didn't deserve it compared to what they were up against, right? People talk about Crash all the time. Forrest Gump is another one that's pretty controversial for a lot of people for being Best Picture. Yet again, like, who's to say what's the best picture, especially in, an audience member's eyes, but it's brought up a lot of controversy with that. And, especially when you have something like Wicked, that is like a straight up musical. And then you have something like that has its own music that they wrote in it and everything, but it's more artistically performed, if I can, to try to say it in the best way. I don't know. It feels like a plant. But to talk about the movies that I have seen, the only two, which is Wicked and Dune Part 2, we gave our opinion on Wicked in my first 2 episodes of the podcast. So go back and watch those, and we can give you our opinion on that. Short answer of it all is we really liked it and really enjoyed it, and I'm not surprised it's on there. And then Dune Part 2 was fantastic. I saw the first one. That was one of those movies I went to the theater by myself and just like ordered like chips and queso and like had a beer and like just like took it in because I didn't know anything about Dune, and I thought it was really good. But it was, I was like, that was good. Felt like an epic, but like they kind of moved on from it. Dune Part 2 just raised the stakes. I mean, Dune Part 2 will make you want to watch Dune Part 1 just to get to Dune Part 2. And not to say I did not like Dune Part 1, but Dune Part 2 is fantastic between the acting, the music, the visual effects, the pacing. Like, they tell that first book in such a good way. And it's made me want to read the books. And so I have the collection. I've read most of the first book at this point. And I know kind of what happens in the next few. I'm excited because I think they've said that they're going to be doing some version of Dune Messiah. And that's going to be kind of the last of this version from what we can tell. And if they're doing Dune Messiah, that's going to be pretty epic because Dune Messiah is great. I'm excited. I hope that movie gets a little more praise than it's been getting like in the media. That movie was a huge epic and really well made and really well done and really felt like it was worth going to the movies to see, kind of like Wicked. And I feel like it just came out and then just disappeared and kind of got swept under the rug for other things. And I don't know how I feel about that because that movie is great. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching it, especially if you don't know what Dune's all about. Like if you haven't read the books or anything, this is the best. I think this is probably the best gateway to it. The book is a tough read. It's a good read. I did enjoy it, but like it's a lot of like, you want to be on an alien world, we're going to give you an alien world. Like we're going to give you some really interesting, words and you got to go back to like, look at the definitions of some things at times. It's rough. So if you're not really looking to do that, the movie is probably a little bit of a better entry for you. We'll just leave it at that. But yeah, the Oscars, I haven't watched them in a while. I think the last time I watched the Oscars was when Chris Rock got slapped by Will Smith, and that wasn't even because it's not like I knew that was going to happen. I just happened to be watching it, whenever it's on and I'm just hanging out. Sometimes I'll turn it on when I'm not doing anything else. But it was, it's been a few years since I put a lot of stock in the Oscars. And so, take with it what you will. If you like any of these movies that are on here and you hope they win Best Picture, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. If you like the movies that you like, no one else should tell you how to feel, right? All right, so moving on to the final topic for the podcast this week. I wanted to talk about another, it's kind of part of the news, but it's also like we're going to kind of go into a little more detail with it. So just recently, the Daredevil Born Again trailer was just released, the first trailer for that. And that is, obviously Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio, kind of taking after, it's continuing the Netflix series from some time ago. And I saw the trailer and it looks great. It looks brutal. It looks very similar to the Netflix show, if not a little more brutal. I'm cautiously optimistic for it. But I just wanted to make this kind of my big spiel on why you should watch Daredevil if you haven't seen it, or why you should read Daredevil if you haven't seen it. So a lot of I'm more of a DC guy. Like, so far in this podcast, I've talked about DC more than Marvel. But I'm a huge Marvel fan too. I have a huge collection of Marvel comics as well. I've seen all the movies. I did an MCU marathon years ago on an old YouTube channel where I went live and I early in the morning, and it was right when Endgame came out. So I literally watched from Iron Man all the way to Infinity War, and it was miserable, but also amazing. And, so I'm a big fan of the movies. I'm a big fan of the TV shows. And Daredevil is actually my favorite Marvel character. I go back and forth between Daredevil and Spider-Man, like a lot of people do. Spider-Man kind of takes over for me at times. But, they're neck and neck for me, not like with Batman and Superman, where Superman is obviously my favorite and Batman is my second favorite. This is one day I'm in Daredevil mood, the next day I'm in a Spider-Man mood. But if you had to tell me, most days I would tell you Daredevil is my favorite Marvel character. So quick rundown of who Daredevil is. Matt Murdock, son of of Battlin' Jack Murdoch, the boxer, grew up in Hell's Kitchen with his dad. They were kind of, poor. And his dad was a boxer, and he wasn't, the best guy. He was a good guy, but he also, was kind of tied to the mob because of his boxing career. And so, he was working for them on the side to kind of get some money. And then on top of it, he was, kind of having to throw fights or win fights, depending on what the mob wanted. Long story short, during that time, Matt Murdock pushes an old man out of the way in a street, and a bunch of toxic chemicals spill and get into his eyes and makes him blind, but it also heightens his senses. So not only he is blind, but he also has more heightened senses than even the average blind person, where he has a radar sense. And basically leads to him kind of getting used to that and like training in that. And in the meantime, his dad's boxing, and his dad is told to throw a fight, and he's sick of it. And in the show, especially, for his son, he wants to win for him. And he knows that this isn't like the best, thing to do, because he'll die probably from the mob. And he doesn't throw the fight, and he wins, transfers some money to Matt from the win on a bet, and he ends up getting kind of whacked by the mob. Matt goes to law school, becomes a lawyer, and that's where the interesting stuff really starts, because you have Matt Murdock, the blind lawyer, Catholic, who is a vigilante at night, and he's a big contradictory story. And it's a dark noir, usually dark noir. Sometimes it's swashbuckling and fun, and that's great too. But a lot of times in the comics, he is a dark, kind of burdened character. Well, let me go back a little, because I want to explain, from the comic book standpoint. A lot of people have asked me, what do you recommend for Daredevil? Because Daredevil isn't one of those that is like, he's gotten more popular over the years, but especially when, a lot of people started reading him, they weren't quite sure where to begin. And he's had some great runs in comic books. He's had, I think he was reinvented by Frank Miller, also known for 300 and Sin City, and he did Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One. Well, he went and he reinvented Daredevil with a story called Daredevil Born Again, which is actually the new Daredevil series on Disney Plus coming out. Is Daredevil Born Again is what it's called. Kind of reinventing the character, kind of dismantling him and then rebuilding him to be a little more leaner and meaner. And he kind of gave Matt a very specific voice. Up until that point, Daredevil was kind of just like a knockoff Spider-Man, the way they treated him. He just didn't have a ton of personality. He was great, and he was a great concept, but he wasn't utilized to his full potential. And I think Frank Miller kind of took that idea and just made it even better and bigger. So he started with Daredevil Born Again. He didn't start with Daredevil Born Again. My apologies. He started with his own run of Daredevil. Started by doing the art, and then he kind of took over the art and the writing, and he's the one who had created Elektra, and he brought Kingpin over from Spider-Man as a villain and brought him into Daredevil's world and made Kingpin more of a bigger character and gave him more teeth. And he did, a great arc with Bullseye. He did a long run for Daredevil, and then he stopped, and then he kind of came back to do Born Again, and kind of like that was later on with David Mazzucchelli, who did the art, and David Mazzucchelli did the art for Batman Year One, which is kind of the same thing he did with Batman as well. So Daredevil kind of got a little bit more of a personality, and he got a big, like, there's a vibe that came with the character after that. And we've had plenty of great runs ever since. The next one I can think of specifically is the Brian Michael Bendis run from the early 2000s. That one was that's probably has the most feel like the Netflix show does. Like if you're looking to read something very much like the Netflix show, the Brian Michael Bendis run of Daredevil is what you probably want most. And there's a lot of others in between. So don't think that like these are just the you have to reads and then there's nothing else. Like there's a ton of great. Ed Brubaker did a great run right after Bendis. And then probably the next one I'd recommend most is Mark Waid's run, because Mark Waid took Daredevil and kind of, like I said, brought him back to the swashbuckly, a little more happy-go-lucky, but he still kept all of the burdens and all of the story and continuity from Frank Miller and Bendis and all those people before. So it kind of reinvented him in a different way, where you could see him not always sad and not always like losing. Sometimes he was just happy. And then the most recent run I would recommend is the Chip Zdarsky run, which is just a few years old at this point, where it's kind of, it takes a lot from the TV show. It takes a lot from Frank Miller and Bendis, and fantastic art. It's actually the first one that I had my wife read, and she was obsessed with it. We read it in single issues, and then I collected it, and it's great. So there's a lot of really good Daredevil stories. Those are just some, but honestly, pick up any Daredevil story and you'll probably like it just because he's such a cool character. Now, with all that being said, let's talk about the Netflix show, which came out in like I don't even know at this point, 2014 maybe, with Netflix. It went for 3 seasons. And then it got canceled because, the rights kind of reverted and things, and they were just going to kind of end it and probably reboot it. But this version was so popular for a lot of people that they've finally rebooted it in a way. It's a soft reboot, but it also continues the first 3 seasons, starring Charlie Cox as Daredevil and Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin. Deborah Ann Wool and I'm so sorry, I forget the actor who plays Foggy, but he was in Mighty Ducks, and that's always what I think about. Charlie Cox is one of the greatest actors I think I've ever seen. I think he's very natural. He took that Daredevil character and just made it like his, and he was so believable. And the choices he made with that character in those series were just so amazing. He's had, that show took a lot of risks with a lot of the way they filmed it and a lot of the way that they wrote it. For instance, the first episode kind of opens with Matt in confessional, and it just holds on him, and it feels like 5 minutes of him just giving a monologue. And like, that's how you introduce your character and you start it. And, if you have any, you can't just have any actor do that. That would be very boring, and it would probably be static and not work well. But Charlie Cox was so good. They wanted to tell you right at the beginning, like, this is what our show's going to be. And this is what's going to, this is the actor who's going to lead us. So the series was, the first season like blew my mind. I binged it like in like 2 days, and that was trying to like hold off and not watch it in a row. And Vincent D'Onofrio playing Kingpin, he reinvented the character as well, made him almost this like man-child, and really just, he was the most intimidating villain up at that point for Marvel, because Marvel had a villain problem with a lot of their movies where you couldn't remember them. Like you kind of think of the first few phases of the Marvel movies up until like Thanos, and besides like Loki and Thanos, you kind of don't remember a lot of the villains. And Vincent D'Onofrio showed up, and he just like, he's neck and neck with Charlie Cox, like it just how it should be, the yin and the yang of the story. You have both characters who had, rough upbringings, who kind of rose to the occasion and made something of themselves in very different ways. And so that whole kind of back and forth is amazing. And it's just, if you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil it, because the best part of that series is just how, like, just the surprises that come with it, the way they approach it, and then the just the cinematography, the fight scenes they take straight from like the Raid and things like that. But a lot of people have talked to death about that series, so it's been around a while. If you haven't seen it, all I got to say is watch it. The cinematography makes it kind of this neo-noir, and then the third season kind of changes it up, and it's still great cinematography, but it's more like a grounded take. And now we have Born Again, and I think it's kind of a take on he's born again because he's at Disney Plus and they brought him back. And this series has gone through a little bit of development hell. It was originally supposed to be started, and it was supposed to come out years ago, and they, I think due to the writer's strike and COVID and things, it kind of threw them off too. But this had a whole creative team that had writers, it had cinematographers, it had the actors, and Charlie Cox was back. He made his brief appearance in Spider-Man No Way Home, and then he appeared in She-Hulk and Echo, and he's kind of had some little spots here and there where he's come back where they're saying he's still Daredevil. But he, we've been waiting on his actual series to come back, and they were talking about it, and they started filming it. And, they were like, we're not bringing back Foggy and Karen Page. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. We're going to do a soft reboot. And then I think, Kevin Feige or whomever, kind of saw, what they were doing, and it just wasn't right. And they just scrapped it, and they said, no, we're going to start from scratch again. And even though they were in the middle of filming, they just stopped, and then they restarted it again. And now they're like, yeah, this is a soft reboot ish, but it's mainly just a continuation of season 3 of Daredevil. And whatever has happened in the Disney Plus shows that he's appeared in. And so we're going right back into it. And with this trailer, it feels so far like the old Netflix show. We'll see what Disney does, if there's things that hold them back, or if they kind of they get hung up on their own stuff to kind of change it for the bad. But from what I'm seeing, it looks amazing. It looks like it's all about the actors. It starts with Matt and Kingpin. and Wilson Fisk in a diner talking, and you feel right at home again. You feel like you're right back in that universe, and I hope that's how the series continues, because it's a great series. It's not on Netflix anymore. Disney Plus, now that they own the character, they ended up taking the rights and putting their shows on Disney Plus. So if you're looking to watch it, you can't watch it on Netflix anymore, but you definitely can watch it on Disney Plus. Physical media, which I really like to point out, it's very hard to get Daredevil. They had seasons 1 and 2 came out in like a limited release and not in the best, quality physically. And they released them, and they're hard to find. They cost a lot of money. Other than like a bootleg, there's no real way you can do physical for Daredevil right now, and that's sad. But if you're looking to watch it, Disney Plus does have it, and they have that. And then the other thing I gotta mention too is when they first did the Daredevil series, they were making their own kind of team. They're doing the Defenders, which was the street level Avengers. You can kind of simplify it down to that. It's not quite that, but the Defenders are kind of the street level guys who go around and they still do the same thing the Avengers do. So they built that up and started with Daredevil, and then they did Jessica Jones, which I saw the first season of, was fantastic. And then they did, I don't remember the order, but they did Iron Fist and Luke Cage. I saw some of Luke Cage and I liked it, and then Iron Fist got a lot of bad reviews and I never watched it. And then they did the Defenders, and they brought all the characters together, and they had kind of a mini series of all of them fighting a bigger deal. And that's what leads... Defenders is actually what leads into season 3 of Daredevil. So if you get confused when you're watching the series, what happens? Why is all this stuff happened like while we weren't watching Daredevil? It's because it happened in the Defenders. None of these are easy to get, like I said, physically, but they all are on Disney Plus, so you could just kind of binge them all. Daredevil Born Again comes out in March, so it's coming out soon. I can't wait. My wife can't wait. We're super excited to get back into that universe. And it's got me back hyped up for Daredevil again. So I am not just a DC fan. I'm not. I'm actually, if you saw my comic book collection, I probably have just as many Marvel books as I do DC. I just prefer DC for various reasons, and we'll get into that in the future podcasts. But Marvel is fantastic, and they've hyped me up like crazy. Between Daredevil and the Spider-Man stuff. And then I've just loved, everything going on. The Tobey Maguire Spider-Man changed my life seeing that in theaters. It was my Superman 1978 for a lot of people. Like it was like the biggest thing for me in my life at that point, my 8-year-old self or however old I was. I've told a lot of people, because a lot of people are like, Marvel's failing and DC, DC was never going to get it together, and Marvel's now doing bad, and maybe there's superhero fatigue. No, I think the problem is there's an imbalance between competition, and competition is a good thing, despite what businesses like to tell you. Whether it's Xbox and Sony and Nintendo, or whether it's movie studios with Warner Brothers and Disney and Universal, or whether it's comic books with, Marvel and DC and Image and Dark Horse and Boom and all those. The more each, publisher or each company puts their best foot forward, the more they do that, the better everyone does, because that's when you start seeing people get complacent, and that's when you start to see the quality slide. You can see it with Marvel. They didn't have a lot of competition in DC. They kind of buried them very quickly, and Marvel just felt like they were infallible. And so they started taking stupid risks, lazy risks, not risks. You see it in their quality. And it was, that's why they're now talking about quality over quantity, because they started making too much of it. And they started thinking everybody was going to watch it just because it was Marvel. And now it's they need to kind of count their steps a little bit more than they used to, especially now that DC is doing what they can to, kind of restart what they're doing and actually bring something people may want. And so that's a good thing. It's a good thing that both studios have a little bit of fight in them, because it'll make the other one want to do better. That's why DC is trying again, and that's why they are starting over again. You start seeing that with Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo. Xbox was huge at one point, and then they got complacent and they started charging you like out the ass for everything. And so then Sony was like, well, we're going to do these things for free, and it's amazing. And look at us. Like, I know you guys don't like us because, we've had our own things, but look at us doing things that Xbox isn't doing. And then Xbox got buried for a while and Sony took over. And now you see it with Sony, where they're charging everybody for everything now. And they're like, you are going to love us no matter what, because you own our console. That happens with everything. And you have to have that balance in competition. Because if you don't, you got monopolies, but if you don't, who's to challenge them, right? Who's to tell them that, you need to change these things? They don't care. You're still going to see them because they're all you got. Look at YouTube. YouTube has no competition. And so YouTube, no matter how YouTube changes their terms and services or how they change the way you make money on it or whatever it may be, they're not going to change, because where are they going to go to where's the content creator or the audience going to go to try to find something better? So it's a good thing. And whenever Marvel's doing well and DC's doing well, it makes me very happy, because that's what we need. And it makes me happy because I love them both. And I'm not one of those people that likes to go Marvel versus DC. I have a preference, but I threw the superhero wars away many decades ago when I just realized I love them all. Regardless, Daredevil Born Again. What is the actual date? I need to see here, because I know it's in March, and it's very soon, and I'm very happy about it. March 4th, almost a month out, we're going to be getting our new Daredevil series. And another reminder too, season 2, they introduced the Punisher, John Barenthal, and he's coming back as well. And he had his own series on top of it. And he's a great Punisher, and he's been like a Henry Cavill. He hasn't quite had he's had great series and people like him as the character, but I don't think he's had his actual moment yet as Punisher. They do a lot with him to make him like retire, and because he's a tough character to write, especially this day and age. And so, I'm excited to see him again as well. So they're bringing everybody back. From all those recommendations of the books, also read the source material it comes from, because you're going to get a lot of references, and on top of it, nothing beats the comics. James Gunn will tell you that. He's been saying that about that stuff for a long time. So that's going to do it for the Stranded J podcast this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll have some guests coming up here soon, and I hope you guys enjoy them. We'll have some more great interviews and things. Whenever we don't, enjoy the news, enjoy some of the things I like to talk about. We're going to have some great things coming out here shortly where we'll have more interactivity with the audience. So stay tuned for that, where we'll have some people that can write in and we can start doing some Q&A stuff. We're also going to have some exclusive stuff coming out too for so I can interact with you guys a little bit more and we can enjoy movies together. So follow us on our Facebook, follow us on our Twitter, follow us on our YouTube and all of the things, because it's all kind of linked together in this great ecosystem that I have created, and we can all enjoy it together. And that's where you'll get the newest updates as well. So stay tuned. But until then, I hope you guys have a great week, and thanks so much for listening.